And then CFI discussion. Okay, here's the QR code. The number of the day is 30. All right, and now I'm going to spend the rest of the discussion just going over what we did last time. And that was introducing a little bit of fragments and Viewpagers. And I'll also go over navigation today too, so it should be exciting. So here I just have this like blank project. It just has a main activity and um, oh gosh, right, okay, it has a main activity and we have the equivalent layout, and there's also some other extra stuff on the side here. We have some networking, which I'll go over briefly today too, and the singleton class, which I'll also go over today too. So to start off, what I want to first define is a Viewpager. And as Jesse said last class, a Viewpager is like a way where you can kind of hoist fragments. It also allows you a way to swipe between fragments. Yeah, so if I go to activity main here, I can define Viewpager as such. Here I can just define, which is called Viewpager2. Don't use Viewpager1, it's not as good. So yeah, we'll just start with Viewpager1, Viewpager2, and then I'll just do match parent. And then since this is a constraint layout, I of course have to, actually I don't have to since I have match parent for both the width and the height, right? So the fragments should be taking up the entirety of our screen here. And then we can go back to the main activity where we can then refer to the Viewpager, the init var Viewpager2. And of course, we have to get the actual view by using find view by ID equals find view by ID Viewpager 2. And then, oh, I forgot to give it an ID. In this case, I'll give it an ID of, actually, I'll give it fragment container. Nice. And then I can refer to that ID fragment container. And as Jesse also mentioned last class too, is that you have to give your Viewpager an adapter that maps it to kind of the fragments that it should be swiping through. In this case, I don't have an adapter set up yet. In this case, I'll just define one straight in this class, in this main activity here. And I can just define it down here. So I'm just going to define a simple adapter, and the adapter takes in a fragment activity, and then it also extends, I think it's fragment state adapter. And that also takes in the fragment activity that's supposed to be passed in. And you'll see that I'll have you overriding, I think, two methods. So in this case, you have get item count and create fragment. In this case, I think today oh yeah, what's up? Right. So I usually declare outside the scope of onCreate, just in case I want to refer to it inside another function, as I'll do later. So if I have like say find onClick or something like that here, I can then access Viewpager2 here directly as well as in onCreate too. Good question. Right, so in this case, I'm gonna only have 3 fragments today, and I'll define, actually no, I won't. I'll just return 3 here directly. And then the second function is what actually creates your fragments for the swiping. In this case, I don't actually have any fragments set up, so I guess we can do that before we actually try defining this function. So I'm just going to create 3 basic fragments. 3 basic fragments. In this case, I'll just make them blank. I'll name this one home. Nice. Oh, I did not name that well. It's fine. Private home, and then I'll name the other one wallpaper fragment. Wait, no. Wallpaper fragment. Wallpaper fragment. Changes. Sure. Wallpaper fragment, and then I'll have a third fragment. I'll just name it profile or something. Wow. Nice. So we have our 3 basic fragments. That's so bad because I named this one only home while the rest of them are named fragment. That's okay. So now we can go back to our main activity. Actually, I want to change a lot of these. So today I actually won't be using these like argument parameters here. I'm just going to get rid of a lot of them. I'll also get rid of this too. And the same thing for the rest of them. And then I can get rid of this class companion object. And then the last bit. Okay. Right, now we can actually define our adapter. So we can use a simple like switch case here, and in Kotlin that's denoted with the when keyword. So if I say when position, it'll detect kind of like what the respective values are. So it's kind of similar to doing like if position equals x, else if. It's in a more compact way. So in this case, since I have 3 fragments, I'll just define it for 0. So at the 0 fragment, I want the home fragment to be created. So I can just return that here. At the first fragment, at the first position, I want the wallpaper fragment to be returned. So I'll just do that here. And then in a second, I'll define our profile fragment. Right, and then usually when you're doing this when you're doing this when, you have to define an else. Since there's only 3 fragments, I want the second to be implied to be, I guess, the profile fragment. So I'll just define this last case to be else. Right, so now we have our adapter. So now we can actually set our adapter to be the adapter that we just created. All right, cool. And then let's try running this. Oh gosh. It's gonna take a minute. I guess in the meantime, while this is running, I'm gonna define some basic things in our fragment. So in our home fragment, I'm gonna just have a lone button. So I'll replace this with a simple button. Actually, change this frame layout to be a constraint layout too. Right. And I think I'm forgetting one of the addresses here. I think it's auto. No, app. Maybe it's fine. Actually, let me see. Oh, looks like the emulator. My computer is bugging out. Okay. Constraint. Oh gosh. Maybe I should have ran the for last. Oh gosh. Okay. Right, so I needed this address here. I guess it automatically defines it for us if you try defining something that has like this app keyword at the start. So I actually didn't have to go through this, but it's okay. I'm just gonna copy this here. Right, because I wanted to define the button to be horizontally centered on our screen here. Button. Button. There you go. To wrap content. Wrap content. In this case, I'll give it a text of change wallpaper. That'll come into handy later. And then that's fine. And then I want to constrain it horizontally. Right, constrain it horizontally, and then nice. Right, so I didn't define it vertically as well, so I'll just constrain it to the top of our parent too. All right, so I have all the constraints. So we have this loan. I also need to give it an ID. ID button. Button. Cool. So my plan with this button is, so the end result of this is that I want to try and load images in our third fragment here, the wallpaper fragment, or I think second fragment, on click of this button. And what I have to do in order to do that is I have to communicate between I have to communicate, oh, sorry, quick detour. Okay, that should be good. I'll introduce this later. This is supposed to be a sneak peek for later, but that's okay. Right, as I was saying, so I want to eventually define this to change behavior in a fragment, and I can do that with kind of like the interface callback, similar to the recycler view. So I can use that as a means to communicate between the two fragments, and I'll do just that. So what we can do to do that is we have to first define our interface, which specifies the callback between the main activity and this home fragment. So I can define callback this. And I'll just specify a function on click. All I really care about is that from this home, I want to tell the main activity that I clicked on this wallpaper button here. and this callback will help me notify the main activity. So first I have to attach this callback um, to the button. I'm waiting for the emulator to show up, but okay. Right. So how fragments work is that this inflator.inflate here kind of defines in the equivalent um, kind of this view. So, and it's returning that to display it to the user. So it's taking, oh yes, sorry. Okay, so it's taking this this bit here, and it's defining what the root view is, and it's displaying that to the user. And you can use this as a reference to get all of the children views underneath of this root view. So just that, because this bit of code here defines what the root view is in context of the fragment home. Right. So if I want to get the button, I can do root view, find view by ID, and give it the ID of the button. In this case, I have to specify the type of find view by ID. There we go. And in this case, I want to replace, if I leave this as is, it'll create a new view, but it wouldn't be the same view that I'm currently trying to craft in these first couple of lines. So I can change this to return the view that I'm currently in this onCreate view, because the point of this function is to create the view for this fragment. And as you can see here, I have on the side of the emulator, let me minimize this. I have this home fragment, and if I swipe, I have the wallpaper fragment, and if I swipe again, I have the profile fragment. And this is all the power of the Viewpager. And I can also swipe back to, in this case, I'll swipe back to home. Right. So then I can first, actually, what I first have to do, so remember that fragments have to be hosted by some activity. So they act as kind of underneath the activity in the sense that they're attached to the hierarchy of, in the life cycle of their activity. So some activity is creating this fragment, and then some activity is also defining this interface for me to call on. So I can get the equivalent callback using callback activity as callback. So this is the portion of the activity that's defined as a callback interface, which I'll actually define in this main activity later. But now we can refer to the onClick in reference of this callback here. So I can do button dot set onClick listener, and then callback dot onClick. And I have to replace this bit to be the root view. Nice. So now we have this home fragment set up to communicate back to the main activity. So now we have to actually accept the communication from the home fragment in the main activity. So how exactly do we do that? We have to first implement the interface that the home fragment defined here. And then the activity will tell us to implement the onClick function that it specifies. Boom, boom, boom. Nice. So then I have this onClick here. And what exactly do I want to do in this onClick? I want to pass some information along to our wallpaper fragment. So the best way that I can do that here, instead of creating a bundle and then passing it along to our wallpaper fragment, I want to create kind of a place where all of our activities and fragments can go to receive some kind of data. And you can do that in Android using a singleton pattern. This is something that I'll introduce more concretely next week. that I wanted to give kind of a sneak peek this week as well. So it'll kind of help us in this mission of communicating data between all components of our app. So I've already predefined this singleton activity prior to class today. I'll just give you a sneak peek of kind of what it does. So I wrote down, so this special keyword object here is a special class that makes it such that there's only ever one instance of this singleton class. So if I create a class with the object keyword instead of class, the Kotlin compiler makes the constructor private, creates a static reference for the object, and initializes the reference in a static block. So basically what that means is that I'll only ever have one instance of this class. So all of our activities and our fragments can refer to this singleton and update it as they will. And those updates will be saved across our app. So in this case, I kept our singleton simple. I just defined a variable to represent the number of picture, which will come into handy later. And I also have a function that increases the number of picture by 1 every time that I call this. So yes. And then you can also define in singleton objects like an initializer. So in this case, I just simply initialized the number of picture to be 0. So I guess how does this come in handy in terms of our main activity flow to our wallpaper flow? Right, so on this onClick, what exactly do I want to do? I want to, one, I want to increment, so I want to get a new picture, so I want to increment this number of picture, and I also want to, because right now I'm still in the home fragment, so I want to then transition to the wallpaper fragment. So I'll do just that, and I can get the singleton like this. So I'll do picture counter singleton. So if I were to do the same thing, let's say in our home fragment here, like counter here and picture counter here are both referring to the same singleton object, which is pretty cool. So I can do picture counter dot increment counter. And now I want to switch to our wallpaper fragment because we're currently at our home fragment. And you can do that by changing the position of where the adapter is. Right now it's at 0, so I want to change the position to be at 1 instead. And I can do that through here. Viewpager 2 dot adapter dot, where is it? Oh, Viewpager dot current item. In this case, I'll set it to 1, which is the position of our wall fragment here. And another unique property of Viewpagers is that when you create a Viewpager, it automatically creates the fragments from one before and one after. So if you're trying to update, let's say, a wallpaper fragment, it'll still hold kind of the old updates because it was automatically loaded beforehand by this Viewpager. So we can kind of force the Viewpager to update our wallpaper fragment if you change any UI in it, which in this case, I am going to. And you can do that directly with Viewpager 2 adapter notify item change. In this case, we're changing only the first. Right. So now in wallpaper fragment, I actually want to try and use that. What am I saying? I want to try and use this number of picture to generate some kind of picture. And that's where, actually first I think I have to define an image view, which I have not done. This is just a blank fragment. So I'm going to do that here. Change this to constraint layout. So I'm going to define a blank image view. Image view. Nice. Match parent. Match parent. Content description, wallpaper. Right, so this whole thing is taking up the picture. So I have this position of the picture that I want to get. And how can I kind of receive pictures? In this case, I want to leverage the power of networking to kind of help me in retrieving pictures from the internet. So also outside of class, I kind of define this networking class here. You don't have to know too much of the details of kind of what this does. We'll introduce this concretely more next week. This kind of gets you like a nice exposure to kind of how networking works in Android. So in this case, I'm using the Pixabay API, and the Pixabay is a website that kind of just hosts lots of pictures. So I'm just using that website to kind of just receive pictures from a number 0 to 5 inclusive. Right, I'm gonna do the same thing here with the, oh my gosh. I'm gonna do the same thing here with the root view. And I also want to get the equivalent image view that I just defined. So I can do root view, find view by ID. I think I forgot to give it an ID. Yes, I did, of course. ID image. Right, now I can do image here. Oh, r.id.image. Okay. And I have to, right. And I guess I want to kind of show concretely kind of how this like flow works from home to main activity to wallpaper. So before I actually introduce any of the networking, I'm going to try and run this and showcase kind of how the values are changing. So I'll just do a simple tag, show num pic. In this case, I can receive the property directly, num of picture to string. Okay. Actually, I'll do log I. Okay. All right, here we go. Okay, so I'm at the home fragment right now. If you go back, it's 0, right? As it should be, because we haven't actually incremented it, right? And if you go back, if you change wallpaper, it's now 1, and then we're still in, so now we're in the wallpaper fragment. So if I go back, I can change it again. 2, there we go, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, right? Okay, so now we actually can see physically like our value is updating and it's able to be persisted across our whole app. So now we can actually generate some pictures, which we'll leverage networking for. So in this case, I want to use a function here. It takes in a picture number, the activity, and then it gives us a callback that returns the URL from the result of this API call. So I can do get picture, singleton number of picture. In this case, I can refer to the activity of the activity that's currently hoisting this fragment. And then now we have to use a callback to our advantage. And this function returns back the URL of the picture. And natively in Android, there's no way to kind of use the URL of the picture to then generate the picture for an image view. So today I'm also going to introduce another library in Android. It's called Glide. I think Glide is developed by, let's see, Glide. Oh, it's developed by Bump Tech. I don't know what Bump Tech is, but thank you for letting us use our API. It's pretty popular, 32K stars. Yeah, it's used pretty often. It just lets us kind of obtain images from our URLs and automatically load it into our image views. I think you have to add some dependencies in Gradle. Right, it's these two dependencies here to use it before you can actually use it in your fragment. So I already defined the dependencies. I'm just gonna use the library. So glide with, so then it takes in some context. So I'm just gonna pass in the context here. And then I want to load the picture from the URL, which I can do using load. I can pass in the URL. And then I want to put it into the image view. And what's nice about Glide is it kind of lets you do multiple operations to the picture before you actually upload it. So if you look at kind of these three functions here, you can circle crop it. So if you want your picture to be a circle, Glide will do that for you. In this case, I'm only going to center crop it today. So just to showcase kind of how the functions work. In this case, I want to load this into our target Y, which in this case is our image view. Cool, and now we can run this. Just play the waiting game. All right, so by default, right now we have it loading the 0th picture, which if we swipe, hopefully we see it, question mark. It also might take a minute since, oh, there we go. Picture of a nice sunflower. Hopefully you guys can see that. The nice sunflower in the ground. Yeah, okay. Right, so now let's change it. Go back here, change wallpaper. Now, now we get a picture of the waterfall, right? But if I did not have this notify items change here, it would still contain the picture of the sunflower. So it's essential that you include this line if you're changing any of your fragments in some way UI-wise, because then because then it notifies at the position that the data is out of date and should be updated. So yes. All right, and then I think I might only have time to showcase a tab layout today. So I'm going to do that. Right, so a tab layout is the next thing I'm going to introduce, and that just lets us kind of have tabs and then use that as a means to navigate in our app. So if I have like, I guess I'll just show you what it looks like. So the tab layout is defined in the main activity, since that's kind of the navigation where the starting point of our navigation. You can also define the tab layout in a fragment too, if your fragment is kind of hoisting other fragments too. But in this case, the main activity is what is being used to hoist all of our fragments. So I'm going to put the tab layout here. In this case, I'll do match parent wrap content. In this case, I'm going to give this an ID of tab layout. Tab layout, constraint left, start of, and then end of. Right. Hopefully that's good, right? Of course. And then top to top of parent too. Right. So now I want to, actually I also want to include a margin top. Margin top, let's do 30 dp, 40 dp, 50. Okay. And I want to have this Viewpager be underneath our tabs. Yeah, underneath our tabs. So I can do top to bottom of our tab layout. Right, does that work? Top to bottom. Yeah, okay, that should be good. Right, so then in conjunction with a Viewpager, a tab layout is actually pretty easy to set up. So we go back to our main activity. All right, this is kind of what I was referencing later beforehand with the late init, because here I'm referencing the Viewpager here directly, but I couldn't do that if it wasn't hoisted, if it was just a local variable inside onCreate. So I created it outside the late init, and I can mess with it here in onClick outside of onCreate too. And then I'm going to do something similar for tab layout. Tab layout. And then tab layout find view by ID or .id.tab layout. Oh, let me capitalize this. Right. Now we have to hook up our tab layout to our Viewpager, and we can do that using a tab layout mediator, where it takes mediator. I spelled it wrong. Nice. So that takes in a tab layout. That also takes in a Viewpager too. And then the last function, the last argument takes is a tab configuration strategy. So that defines how you want to map up your tabs and your positions. So in this case, I want to do when position, similar to how we did the adapter here. I'm going to map up what each position should mean in terms of the tabs. So in this case, at 0, I want to change tab text to be home. And at 1, I want it to be tab.text was wallpaper. And then at 2, I'll do else. At else, it should be tab.text equals profile. So then we can boot this up. Oh, I forgot one part. Stop. Stop. Okay. The last part of this is I have to commit these changes, and I can do that with the attach function, which attaches the tab layout to the Viewpager and kind of ceremonializes that relationship between the two, officiates the relationship between the two, is what I meant to say. Right, so now we're waiting for this to finish building, and then I'll set it up and I'll show you how the tab look like. I guess any questions in the meantime? Yeah, what's up?
On the back to like the now when you make the Viewpager, the height was set to match that it's set to be below the tab.
Oh, this is wrong.
So how does Android deal with that? Height is smaller than
Usually, yeah, so usually you have to be careful with kind of like, 'cause usually you also run into the same issue when you're doing recycled views too, where if you do match height, you can kind of run into issues where things will get cut off. That's also like a big bug issue. People will type, why is my recycled view cut off, or why is my Viewpager cut off? I think this actually might or might not be cut off. I guess we're gonna see. Because if you see here, it looks like it's kind of like constrained weirdly too. I think usually what some people do is that they make this 0, and then they start of parent, and then bottom to bottom of parent. So then it's actually defined to be the whole space, kind of well constrained, but it should be. I think this could also be wrap content too. Maybe not. Maybe 0 dB it is. DP it is. We'll see. Right, and then there's the issue where it's taking up the whole screen, but it's also conflicting with the tab layout. So I think this might fix it. Oh yeah, but there is the tabs right there: home, wallpaper, and profile. So then if I can either switch by tapping them, or I can also swipe to switch them automatically too, because they're both linked by this tab layout mediator. Launch successful. And where is it? Nice. So good catch, thank you. So right now it's actually underneath, as it should be. And then if you want to swipe, we'll switch. And we have to wait for the image to be loaded, of course. Right, we have our beautiful image. We can go back, change wallpaper, and it automatically changes the tab too. So it's pretty neat. If I want to swipe profile, I can do that too. And yeah, that's one example of navigation in Android. The other example is bottom navigation view, which I think I I will showcase next class, or I might post an additional video probably tonight too, showcasing it. So we're almost out of time. So I guess I'll spend like the last minute kind of introducing the homework for this week. I don't think you have to use a bottom navigation view to do it, so I think it's fine being able to do it with a tab layout. Right. Oh, it's also there too if you want to take a look at it too. Right. So here is the homework for this week. There's like a starter code. It's very similar to kind of the starter code here, where it has the navigation set up for you already. I don't think there's a single in there for you, so you might have to set that up set that up yourself too. I think I'll post a demo code after class too, so you can kind of refer to this as well. Um, but it's very similar to kind of what we did during demo. It just builds off of it by having some additional functionality using um, one more images, and I think using the permission, the normal permission, so it shouldn't be too complex. The normal permission set wallpaper, and it kind of gives you an example of how you can set the resource of a wallpaper manager, and this will set the wallpaper in Android too. So it's a pretty neat permission that you get to kind of play with for the homework this week. And yeah, that's it for class discussion today. Thank you guys for coming. Um, yeah, I guess any last minute questions before you guys go?